Today's devotional is based on Matthew 27:57-66. The verses speak of Joseph retrieving Jesus' body from Pilate and taking it to the tomb, and they also speak of the Jewish leaders petitioning Pilate to put a guard around the same tomb because they recalled that the deceiver, as they called Jesus, had said that he would be resurrected, and they feared that the disciples would steal his body and claim that he had risen. They were expecting a revolution, but the disciples had no intent of stealing the body. It's very interesting that the Gospels give us very little detail on what the disciples did do on that day, the day that we call Black Saturday, for good reason. It may sound odd, but the Saturday between Good Friday and Easter Sunday has actually always been one of the most relatable days in the Christian calendar for me. I think that we can all relate to the fact that that Saturday must have been devastatingly difficult for the disciples and followers of Jesus, a day of misgivings, sadness, of darkness, and lost hope. I've seen quoted before the day between death and life, and I know that some of us have experienced that darkness for ourselves. So many of us are going through such a difficult time at the moment, whether it be health related, finances, relationships, or a year of a pandemic. I'm sure you've heard the phrase before regarding Easter, it's Friday, but Sunday is coming. And in our knowing the fullness of Jesus' miraculous resurrection and all that entailed is such a beautiful message of hope. And if that resonates with you, then hold on to that with both hands. But I also want to speak to those who don't feel like Sunday is ever going to come. Those that feel they've lost their hope. We hear you, we see you, and you are not alone. The disciples spent 3 years journeying with Jesus, experiencing his love and miracles firsthand. But on that day between death and life, they still despaired and they still had doubts. Jesus had told them face to face that he would return, and they still despaired and they still had doubt. I've lived with quite severe mental health difficulties for much of my life, and there have been periods of days, weeks and months that I have not been able to see what God's plan is. How that there's any way out of those feelings of despair and darkness. There have been moments when I've cried out to God in the night, scared for my life, and felt nothing. And I've really struggled with feelings of guilt, that I don't feel hopeful, or envy that others do. I've even been told that I don't have enough faith, and I felt like I'm not good enough. Once I was brave to say out loud that I don't have any hope for my future, that I do believe in God, but I don't feel like I'll ever be healed or that I'll ever be able to live a normal looking life. And a beautiful and wise friend said to me in that moment that I will hold hope for you. The day between death and life is liminal, which means on the threshold. For the disciples, it was a dark day, and I know that some of us are living in that liminal place, the space between the now and the not yet, and we've lost our hope. We don't understand what God is doing in our situation. We don't even know where he is in our situation. We may even feel like he's not there. Our faith, our Christian faith, is one of hope and of knowledge of God's faithful promise. But God doesn't always give us a timeline, and we don't know how long we have to wait in this place. Jesus told the disciples 3 days, and yet when he returned to them, some of them still doubted. I want us to think about 3 things. 1, do not feel guilty or not good enough if you're struggling to have hope for yourself or a particular situation. Many times we see in scripture where people who knew Jesus in person didn't understand what he was doing or why. Let us hold hope for each other. Reach out if you're struggling. More importantly, reach out to those that you see are struggling. There are people who want to help, who want to pray with you, that will stand and have hope for you in this moment. I have had people stand and have hope for me when I couldn't have it for myself. And remember, we are on the threshold. Even if we're questioning everything we ever thought we knew about God, or are battling to understand what He is doing, even in the liminal, the space between, there is grace and love. I wouldn't have been able to say this a year ago, and then maybe a time in the future when I don't believe it again. But for now, Sunday is coming.